Many people misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries are walls. They think boundaries push people away. They think boundaries are cold, selfish, or unnecessary. But healthy boundaries are none of those things. Boundaries are clarity. They are the clear lines that protect your time, your energy, your peace, and your self-respect. Without boundaries, resentment grows quietly. People overstep. Expectations become unclear, and relationships begin to feel heavier than they should. The truth is this: most people do not struggle because they don't know boundaries matter. They struggle because they don't know how to set them the right way. Let's talk about that. First, boundaries are about you, not them. A common mistake people make is trying to set boundaries by controlling someone else. They say things like, "You need to stop doing this. You have to change that." That usually creates resistance, because boundaries are not rules for other people. They are decisions about what you will allow and how you will respond. Instead of saying, "You need to stop calling me late at night," you say, "I don't answer calls late at night. If it's urgent, text me." Notice the difference. One tries to control them, the other clearly defines you. Strong boundaries focus on your behavior, not theirs. Second, say it calmly, not emotionally. Many people wait too long to set boundaries. They stay silent. They tolerate too much. They hope the issue will fix itself. Then one day they explode. Now the boundary comes out in anger, and the message gets lost inside the emotion. Boundaries work best when spoken early and calmly, not after resentment is built. You don't need a dramatic speech, you need a clear sentence. "I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I won't continue this conversation if it becomes disrespectful." Calm communication carries strength, because control is persuasive. Emotion often distracts from the message. Third, expect pushback. Not everyone will like your boundaries, especially people who benefited from your lack of them. Some may call you selfish. Some may say you've changed. Some may act offended. That reaction does not automatically mean you are wrong. Sometimes people resist boundaries because boundaries remove access they were used to having. This is important to remember. Discomfort from others is not always a sign of unfairness. Sometimes it is simply a sign of change. You are allowed to grow even when others preferred the old version of you. Fourth, consistency builds credibility. A boundary spoken once but ignored repeatedly becomes a suggestion. Consistency is what gives boundaries strength. If you say you won't engage in disrespectful conversations, then continue staying in them every time. The words lose weight. People learn your standards by what you repeatedly enforce. Consistency does not require aggression. It requires follow-through. You calmly repeat the boundary. You calmly act on it. You calmly remain steady. Over time, steady behavior earns more respect than dramatic speeches ever will. Fifth, boundaries protect relationships. Many people fear boundaries will damage connection. Often the opposite is true. Unspoken resentment damages relationships. Confusion damages relationships. Repeated overstepping damages relationships. Boundaries reduce resentment because expectations become clear. They help people understand how to relate to you in a healthier way. And when someone truly values the relationship, clarity usually helps it grow stronger. The right way to set boundaries is not with anger, not with guilt, not with long explanations. It is with clarity, calmness, consistency, and self-respect. Because boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about protecting what matters within you. And when you learn to set them well, you stop feeling controlled by other people's expectations. You start living with more peace, more confidence, and relationships built on mutual respect. Boundaries are often misunderstood because many people associate them with rejection, distance, or punishment. When someone hears the word boundary, they may imagine walls being built or relationships being pushed away. In reality, healthy boundaries are not designed to punish anyone. They are meant to create clarity. They communicate what is acceptable, what is not, and how a person chooses to protect their time, energy, values, and emotional well-being. Rather than controlling others, boundaries help define the conditions under which healthy relationships can function. A punishment is usually intended to make someone suffer for behavior that is considered wrong. It focuses on forcing a consequence onto another person. Boundaries work differently. They focus on personal responsibility and self-respect. Instead of saying, "I'm going to make you pay for crossing a line," a healthy boundary says, "This is what I am willing to participate in, and this is how I will respond if that line is crossed." The difference may seem subtle, but it changes the entire dynamic. When boundaries are used as attempts to control others, they often create conflict. Someone might say, "You need to stop doing this," or "You are not allowed to act that way." Statements like these usually center on changing the other person's behavior. While it is understandable to want different treatment, trying to control another person often leads to resistance. People naturally push back when they feel managed or forced. Boundaries become more effective when they focus on what you will do rather than what someone else must do. For example, instead of demanding that someone stop calling late at night, a healthy boundary would communicate that late-night calls will not be answered and that urgent matters can be handled another way. This approach does not attempt to control the other person's actions. It simply explains what is acceptable for you and how you will respond. The message is clear, respectful, and centered on your own choices. Clarity is one of the greatest strengths of boundaries because many relationship problems come from unclear expectations. People often assume others know what feels respectful, what feels draining, or what behavior crosses a line. But assumptions create confusion. What seems obvious to one person may not be obvious to another. Boundaries remove guesswork by expressing expectations directly. They help people understand where the lines are, which can prevent resentment from quietly building over time. Without clear boundaries, frustration often grows in silence. A person may continue tolerating behavior that feels uncomfortable because they do not want conflict or do not know how to address it. They may hope the situation improves on its own. But when nothing changes, resentment increases. Eventually, the frustration may come out in anger, making the issue feel larger and more emotional than it needed to be. Clear boundaries address problems earlier, before resentment has time to grow. Healthy boundaries also create fairness in relationships. They allow both people to understand what is expected and what is respectful. This transparency can actually strengthen connection because it reduces confusion and hidden tension. Relationships often become more stable when people know where they stand with each other. Another important part of boundaries is consistency. A boundary is not simply something said once during a stressful moment. It is a standard that is maintained over time. If someone communicates a limit but repeatedly ignores it themselves, the message becomes unclear again. Consistency reinforces the clarity that boundaries are meant to create. It teaches others how to interact with you by showing that your standards are real and steady. People sometimes feel guilty when setting boundaries because they worry they are being selfish or harsh. This guilt often comes from confusing boundaries with punishment. Protecting your well-being is not the same as trying to hurt someone else. Choosing not to engage in disrespectful behavior, declining unreasonable demands, or limiting access to protect your peace are acts of self-respect, not cruelty. Boundaries also leave room for others to make their own choices. You are not forcing someone to become different. You are simply deciding what role certain behaviors will have in your life. The other person remains free to choose how they act, just as you remain free to choose what you accept. This mutual freedom is what makes boundaries healthier than control. When boundaries are understood as clarity rather than punishment, they become less intimidating to set and easier for others to respect. They are no longer dramatic ultimatums or attempts to win power struggles. They become honest communication about values, limits, and expectations. Through that clarity, relationships gain a stronger foundation built on understanding instead of assumption. Setting boundaries is not only about what is said, but also about how it is said. Many people believe that boundaries must be forceful, dramatic, or emotionally intense in order to be taken seriously. They assume that unless frustration is visible, others will ignore the message. Because of this belief, some wait until they are overwhelmed before speaking up. By the time they finally express a boundary, it often comes out through anger, irritation, or emotional exhaustion. While the concern may be valid, the delivery can weaken the effectiveness of the message. Calm delivery creates stronger boundaries because it keeps attention on the standard being communicated rather than the emotion surrounding it. When someone speaks firmly and respectfully, the message feels intentional and clear. The listener understands that the boundary is a considered decision, not just a temporary reaction to stress. This sense of steadiness gives the words more credibility and makes it easier for others to understand where the line truly is. Emotional reactions often shift focus away from the boundary itself. If a person raises their voice, uses harsh language, or expresses long-stored resentment all at once, the conversation may quickly become about tone rather than content. The other person may respond defensively to the intensity instead of considering the actual issue. Arguments about attitude, volume, or wording can replace the original topic entirely. As a result, the important boundary becomes lost inside the conflict. Calm communication reduces that risk. A steady voice and direct language make it harder for the conversation to drift into unnecessary drama. Instead of reacting to emotional intensity, the other person is more likely to hear the actual limit being expressed. Calmness does not mean weakness, it means control. It shows that the person setting the boundary is grounded enough to speak with purpose rather than impulse. Another reason calm delivery is effective is that it reflects self-respect. When someone communicates limits without hostility, they demonstrate confidence in their own standards. They do not need to prove the seriousness of the boundary through anger. The firmness comes from consistency and clarity, not emotional force. This often earns more respect than reactive behavior because it signals maturity and steadiness. People are also more receptive to respectful communication. Even if they do not fully agree, they are less likely to feel attacked when the message is delivered calmly. This creates a better chance for understanding and cooperation. A respectful tone lowers defensiveness and leaves space for discussion if needed. In many cases, people respond more positively to boundaries when they are presented without blame or hostility. Calm boundaries are especially important because many people wait too long before expressing them. They tolerate discomfort, ignore small frustrations, or hope situations improve on their own. Over time, resentment builds quietly. When the boundary is finally expressed, it may come out with the weight of every previous frustration attached to it. The issue then feels larger and more explosive than it originally was. Speaking calmly and earlier often prevents this buildup from happening. Simple statements are often the strongest. Saying that something does not work for you, that you are unavailable, or that you will not continue a disrespectful conversation can be powerful when said with steadiness. These phrases do not require long explanations or emotional intensity. Their strength comes from clarity and follow-through. Calm delivery also helps the person setting the boundary remain centered. Emotional reactions can create regret afterward, especially if words were harsher than intended. Speaking calmly allows people to communicate in a way that aligns with their values. They are less likely to leave the conversation feeling they lost control or misrepresented themselves. Over time, consistent calm boundaries teach others how to interact with you. People learn that your standards are real, not temporary moods. They see that limits are not random or dramatic but stable and dependable. This predictability often leads to greater respect because others understand that the boundary will remain the same regardless of emotional pressure. Firmness and respect can exist together. A person can be kind without being passive, and clear without being harsh. Calm delivery combines these qualities by protecting dignity on both sides of the conversation. The message remains strong while the relationship has a better chance of staying healthy. When boundaries are communicated through emotional reactions alone, they may feel urgent in the moment, but less stable over time. When boundaries are spoken calmly, they carry a sense of permanence and intention. The listener hears not just frustration, but a clear standard that deserves to be understood and taken seriously. Consistency is one of the most important parts of setting boundaries because boundaries are not created by words alone. They are created by repeated actions over time. A person can clearly state a limit once, but if that limit is not maintained, it quickly loses meaning. Others learn how serious a boundary is not only from hearing it, but from watching whether it remains steady when challenged. This is why consistency earns respect. It shows that your standards are real, dependable, and not based only on emotion in a single moment. Many people believe that setting a boundary is simply about having one difficult conversation. They think that once they explain their limit, the situation should automatically change. In reality, boundaries are often tested. Sometimes this happens intentionally, and sometimes it happens because people are used to old patterns. If someone has always had access to your time, energy, or patience without limits, they may continue acting the same way until they see that the dynamic has truly changed. When boundaries are inconsistent, confusion follows. If you say one day that certain behavior is not acceptable, but allow it the next day without response, others receive mixed signals. They may not know whether the limit still exists or whether it only applies occasionally. Over time, the boundary begins to feel optional rather than real. Even people with good intentions may struggle to understand what is expected when the message keeps changing. Consistency removes that confusion. It communicates the same standard repeatedly through calm follow-through. If you say you will not continue conversations that become disrespectful, then you end those conversations when disrespect appears. If you say you are unavailable during certain hours, then you protect that time regularly. The repetition of these actions teaches others where the line truly is. Another reason consistency earns respect is that it reflects self-respect. When you maintain your own limits, you show that your well-being matters to you. You are not waiting for others to value your needs before you value them yourself. This quiet confidence often changes how people interact with you. Others tend to take standards more seriously when they see that you take them seriously first. Inconsistent boundaries often come from guilt, discomfort, or fear of disappointing others. A person may set a limit, then quickly withdraw it when someone reacts negatively. They may worry about seeming selfish or creating tension. While these feelings are understandable, repeatedly abandoning your own boundaries teaches others that emotional pressure can override your standards. This can encourage further overstepping because the limit appears negotiable whenever enough discomfort is created. Consistency does not mean harshness or rigidity. It does not require aggressive reactions or dramatic confrontations. It simply means being steady. You can repeat the same boundary calmly and respectfully each time it is needed. In many cases, calm repetition is more powerful than emotional intensity because it signals that the boundary is thoughtful and lasting, not impulsive. Respect often grows from predictability. People trust what they can understand and rely on. When your boundaries remain clear over time, others know what to expect from you. They know what behavior is acceptable and what is not. This predictability reduces unnecessary conflict because there is less confusion about where things stand. Consistency also protects relationships from resentment. When boundaries are ignored repeatedly because they are not maintained, frustration tends to build inside the person who set them. They may feel unheard, taken for granted, or emotionally drained. Eventually, this frustration can surface in anger, making the issue feel larger than it originally was. Consistent boundaries address problems earlier and prevent resentment from quietly accumulating. It is also important to understand that some people may resist consistent boundaries at first. If they benefited from your inconsistency in the past, they may dislike the change. They might question your decisions, test the limit again, or suggest that you have become difficult. This reaction does not mean the boundary is wrong. It often means the pattern is changing. Over time, steady boundaries usually lead to healthier interactions. People adjust to the new standard because it remains clear and dependable. They learn that certain behaviors no longer produce the same access or response. In many cases, this creates more balanced and respectful relationships because expectations become better defined. Boundaries only work when they are lived, not merely spoken. Words introduce the limit, but consistency gives it strength. Each time you calmly uphold a standard, you reinforce your values and teach others how to treat you. Respect is rarely demanded through force. It is often earned through steady behavior that remains clear, calm, and unchanged over time. Guilt often appears at the exact moment a person begins to grow. This is especially true when someone starts setting boundaries after a long period of overextending themselves, pleasing others, or avoiding conflict. Many people assume that if setting a boundary feels uncomfortable, then the boundary must be selfish or unfair. In reality, discomfort is often a natural response to change. Feeling guilty does not automatically mean something is wrong. Sometimes it simply means an old pattern is being challenged. People who are used to saying yes, staying available, or keeping everyone comfortable often build an identity around being easy to access. They may feel valued because they are dependable, accommodating, and willing to carry more than their share. While generosity can be healthy, it becomes unhealthy when it consistently requires self-neglect. When a person begins to say no, ask for respect, or protect their time, it can feel unfamiliar. That unfamiliar feeling is often interpreted as guilt. The mind tends to confuse familiarity with correctness. If you have spent years prioritizing other people's needs over your own, then self-protection can feel unnatural at first. The old behavior feels normal simply because it is practiced, not because it is healthy. When you step into a new behavior such as setting limits, the emotional discomfort comes from leaving what is familiar, not necessarily from doing something wrong. Another reason guilt appears is because boundaries can disrupt expectations. If people are accustomed to unlimited access to your time, energy, or patience, they may react when that access changes. They might express disappointment, frustration, or surprise. Seeing those reactions can create guilt, especially if you care deeply about those people. You may begin to think that because someone is unhappy, you must have done something harmful. But another person's discomfort is not always evidence of your wrongdoing. Sometimes it is simply evidence that the relationship dynamic is changing. Many people have also been taught, directly or indirectly, that kindness means endless availability. They learn that being a good friend, partner, family member, or colleague means always helping, always agreeing, and never creating inconvenience. Under that belief system, boundaries can feel like betrayal. Yet healthy kindness does not require self-erasure. Supporting others and protecting yourself are not opposites. They can exist together. Guilt can also arise because boundaries force a person to witness needs they previously ignored. When you say no to something unreasonable, you are acknowledging that your energy has limits. When you ask for respectful treatment, you are acknowledging that your dignity matters. When you step away from draining interactions, you are acknowledging that peace has value. These truths can feel uncomfortable if you have spent years minimizing your own needs. It is important to distinguish guilt from guidance. Genuine guilt can be useful when it points to behavior that violates your values. For example, if you intentionally hurt someone or acted unfairly, guilt may encourage repair, but boundary guilt is often different. It appears even when you communicate respectfully and reasonably. It appears because you are changing habits, not because you are causing harm. This is why reflection matters. Instead of asking only, "Do I feel guilty?" it can be more helpful to ask, "Was the boundary respectful, clear, and fair?" If the answer is yes, then the guilt may simply be emotional resistance to growth. Feelings deserve attention, but they are not always proof that something is wrong. Over time, repeated healthy boundaries often reduce unnecessary guilt. As you experience the benefits of clearer relationships, better energy management, and greater self-respect, the discomfort begins to fade. What once felt selfish starts to feel balanced. What once felt harsh starts to feel normal. This happens because the mind slowly adjusts to a healthier standard. Growth frequently feels uncomfortable because it asks you to become someone different from the version of you that others expected. It may require disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. It may require tolerating temporary tension while long-term health improves. These moments can trigger guilt, but guilt is not always a stop sign. Sometimes it is just the emotional cost of leaving unhealthy patterns behind. When boundaries are set with calmness, honesty, and respect, discomfort does not automatically mean they are wrong. It may simply mean you are learning to protect what once went unprotected. It may mean your self-worth is becoming stronger than your fear of displeasing others. It may mean growth has begun, and growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels natural.